All right, here we are, El Salvador. Max and Stacy, I want to direct your attention to this diagram that I drew. You can get a good fuzzy look at it over there. See, this is El Salvador, surrounded by dragons. There are dragons out there. There be dragons. And this is increasingly becoming the story. Everything outside of El Salvador looks like it's falling apart completely. Stacy.
That's right. Those don't look like dragons to me, but you know what? We'll deal with that another day. But in the meantime, I want to say yes. Well, the banks are falling apart in the United States, right? By the way, while the banks are collapsing, have all of those financial media or the Fitch or the Moody's of the world apologize to El Salvador? We didn't go default on our debts. We didn't go bankrupt. We didn't go bust. We didn't have chaos. We didn't have any of that here. No, it was there in the heart of New York City and the heart of Silicon Valley and the heart of Frankfurt and Switzerland and Geneva and all that sort of stuff. All of their banks are falling apart. All of their schemes are collapsing. They're the ones that were projecting onto us all of their own fraud.
They were projecting onto us. We have become the safe haven, which is amazing because even a year ago, we were considered to be the murder capital of the world. Now it's El Salvador, the safe haven, the safest country in the Americas, safer than even Canada, probably safer than most Disneyland parks here. It's becoming almost antiseptic. It's so safe.
No, it's not. This is like cultural capital of the world. And I'm sorry if I'm making a lot of noise with trying to readjust my microphone. You know, we've been very, very busy here because it is the Ark. It is the safe haven. It is the sea of tranquility in an ocean of chaos caused by fiat. And so Max and I have been very, very busy because we have many, many Bitcoin companies, by the way, wanting to move here. We have all sorts of friends throughout our lifetimes calling us saying they want to move here. I can't tell you the number of people who have contacted me, and we've been having Zoom calls. We've just had a long meeting as well with a whole bunch of Bitcoin companies here. So we've been talking, and you know, things are happening here. Things are building, things are moving forward, and things are progressing. It is like, it is totally not antiseptic. It's like hot as fuck here.
Yeah, I know.
Like literally and figuratively.
Like, you know, exaggerating to the nth degree. But to your point, so true. As somebody said just today, they said, hey, you guys saw into the future, and now everyone's catching up to what you saw. You know, it's kind of true. So when President Bukele made Bitcoin legal tender, you know, we caught our attention, and within a few months we moved here. And everything that's happened since then has just compounded this hyper Bitcoinization and the orange pilling that's been going on here. And now folks, after a year or so in the US and other locations, they're really starting to run out of patience. They don't see things improving in the US or other locations around the world. And they see that things have radically improved here. So I put a poll up on Twitter, curious what you might think about this. And my poll, I mean, sometimes I just tweet things without really thinking about them. It's just stream of consciousness. And a lot of times I tweet things that are just utter nonsense.
Most of the time.
Well, yeah, most of the time I just tweet things that are utter nonsense. But so this poll may fundamentally be based on some structurally incorrect information. But nevertheless, I did run this poll on Twitter. So the idea was, at what point does the migrant flow in between El Salvador and the U.S. reverse? So in other words, at what point did we go from net leaving, migrants leaving, to net migrants arriving? And this would be the Canadians and the Americans and the Europeans and the Asians who are coming to take advantage of El Salvador. And the choices were 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and 12 months. I checked a little bit before, and I think 40% said maybe 12 months. But I think this is an interesting metric. I think that we're almost at a break even. We're almost at a stasis. There's almost about an even split at the moment. At last I checked, Stacy.
There isn't much time to get out. Like, we've been warning you, but now it's here. We've been warning you for a few years. not only about the coming financial collapse and the monetary collapse, but we've been pointing out the obvious in terms of the US dollar, is the global reserve currency, or has been for the past few decades. And we pointed out the warning signs that they're basically rugging the whole world. Interestingly, because it's an interesting way of operating and it's an interesting policy. I don't know what their end goal is there to blow it up. Let's see how that goes. Nevertheless, they seem to be doing it. We've been warning you about, this emerging authoritarian surveillance state in the United States, especially under the Democrats, who are literally totalitarian. If you look at the definition of how they operate in terms of erasing history, changing the meanings of words, like that famous quote in 1984 of just like, they want to disintegrate the, your conception of truth. They want no truth except for the truth that they tell you that moment is their truth. And this is happening faster and faster, and it's disintegrating faster. So we've seen in the past day, we've seen a settlement of some oil traded in yuan.
That's what I was going to mention.
We see Saudi Arabia joining BRICS. We see the disintegration of that petrodollar system.
Speak on it.
We see also in the United States that they want to introduce this ban on TikTok. And in order to ban TikTok, then they have to ban an entire segment of free speech.
Tell the people.
And also say that, Americans, or I guess anybody under the authority of some new ministry that they're going to create or some new position will have some sort of power to throw you in prison for 20 years and fine you $1 million for using a VPN. Like, it's just like, what the hell is happening so fast?
Yeah. Well, so liquefied natural gas, I think, is the contract that's being settled in yuan between Russia, China. So that's the first point. So all of the post-World War II dollar-based trade, after World War II, they went Bretton Woods, and Bretton Woods made everything based on the dollar. Everything had to use the dollar. Everyone wanted to trade oil and gas, had to use the dollar. And now, of course, these countries, the biggest countries, China, the BRICS, they're moving away from the dollar. So the dollar loses world reserve currency status, which is obviously very detrimental to the United States economy. But again, nobody seems to be talking about that really in earnest or seriously, or what it all means and how this impacts people's lives. And it's obviously inflationary. The inflation is not transitory, because the breakdown in the way the global economy is occurring outside of U.S. dollar as the world reserve currency means that the client states of America, which means every country that's not America, is going to start charging more for their stuff because they don't want dollars, right? It's very simple. Like, we don't want dollars. So it's going to cost more, or give us more dollars. We don't want it. So inflation's now intractable. Inflation's now systemically built in going forward. And that means quality of life is going to go down. It's axiomatically true that quality of life will go down. And there's no way that the GDP will ever rise to any equation where paying off deficit becomes a reality. So that's only going to grow exponentially. So on the point of authoritarianism, why it seems like the policymakers are reaching for solutions. They've given up trying to solve things economically. So they're going into a box called authoritarianism, right? That's where they're looking for the solutions. With this new passage of a new law, I guess, where you can get criminalization of using a VPN, and this advanced surveillance state approach and authoritarianism. So again, Stacy, explain to me, if you had two boxes in front of you, one was, we're going to rely on entrepreneurialism and American can-doism, and here we're going to go to authoritarianism. Why are they picking the authoritarian box? Explain this to me, as if I'm a 5-year-old or a dog.
Right. Or like a Ripple investor, right? Well, I'll say this. It was predictable. Like, you could see that from the left wing, the Democratic Party. I don't even like to ascribe left-wing sort of thoughts or opinions or ideology to them. It's just like something else, right? I think the authoritarian thing usually happens when a very powerful group of people very suddenly lose authority, because it's like hyperinflation, right? Hyperinflation is a political event whereby people lose faith in the currency. It's not just too much money printing, which causes inflation. It's like immediate collapse of your currency. Well, they suffered an immediate collapse of their of people's trust in these institutions, which is this party, which is the entire apparatus of the Democratic elite ruling party, whether it's the media, it's the Hillary Clintons of the world, it's the Democratic Party itself, the DNC. Like, it lost, like, people lost faith in it. And what they did is they didn't actually have any principles, right? They had no moral compass to come back to. They had no there. There was nothing there other than power, their lust for power and holding on to power. So they didn't have anything, no virtues to turn back to. They didn't have the principles to help them navigate this collapse, right? So they turn instead to what they still do have is the vestiges of power. And that is what they turned against the people. So their people, their party members ruled Silicon Valley, right? And they controlled Twitter and Facebook and all the social media. So what they did is turned on those and don't let those plebs, those horrible people out there, these stupid voters who didn't understand it was my turn to be president. Like, let's punish those people, because that's what you saw. The results are like the actions. If you go back, like if like a Jeopardy question, you see the result. What was the question? Like, you're trying to find what the question is. Yeah. So you saw the thinking of what Hillary Clinton and the people around her thought is like, okay, we know on the surface they're blaming Russia and they attacked Putin, but in fact, their actions are mostly against the ordinary American people that didn't vote for her. And she hates them with a passion, and so did the whole Democratic Party. The deplorables.
You know, so you're saying that the people who had authority suddenly lost authority, and they turned to authoritarianism out of spite.
Yes.
They become spiteful.
Yes.
So Hillary Clinton became spiteful.
Yes.
And her spitefulness is the manifested by this increased authoritarianism, the surveillance state, and the absolute hatred of, as she calls them, the deplorables, that should be the ordinary American. And this is possible because over the past 40 years, the hollowing out of the American economy, the manufacturing base being shipped to China, et cetera, and replaced with the culture wars and the cultural economy and the idea economy. Remember, Apple Computer it's conceived in Los Angeles or in San Francisco or where are they? Cupertino or Silicon Valley. It's like conceived in Silicon Valley, built in China, right? Like we get the intellectual property. You know, we're Starbucks. We sell coffee beans from the third world and we mark it up 10,000%, but we put our logo on those coffee beans and that's the intellectual property. And we've hollowed out that economy. And so they hollowed out the domestic economy. So it was ripe for somebody, an authoritarian minded, spiteful individual like a Hillary and her coterie to walk in and impose willy-nilly, without much judicial review, abject authoritarianism.
Well, a lot of that is, you know, I talk about the projection all the time, but it's guilt, right? They know they are the guilty party. And you bring it up as the hollowing out of the American economy, the deindustrialization of America. You could see it in the data. It is there for all to see, is that, the deindustrialization that happened whereby we sent all our jobs over to China when Bill Clinton brought China into WTO. on favored nation status. So they got to, they still operate under a developing nation. They still get to put tariffs on our goods in America, and we can't put tariffs on their goods, for example. So they did that. Bill Clinton did that. But it benefited hugely, massively, the coastal elite. You could see their wealth rise astronomically from 2000, 2001. And you see it all. I mean, everybody always points out to 1971, but it was really 2001 where you see it go exponential.
That's a key point you make there. 1971, when we went off gold, we went to pure fiat. And you're saying in the early 2000s was really the deindustrialization went into hyperdrive.
That's when it couldn't happen without all fiat. And this is the Triffin Dilemma. Like, it was inevitable that this would happen. But originally, through the 80s and 90s, it did seem to be a situation where it seemed like everything was getting better for everybody. And even if there was some deindustrialization, that, the overall population would be better. But now we see, oh my God, people were tweeting that chart this past week of the mortality rate, right? So obviously, global mortality increased greatly during the first year of the pandemic. Deaths increased, and you can see that in the charts around the world in all countries. Since then, they're back to trend. Europe, Australia, Asia, the rest of the world is back on trend. The United States is the single outlier amongst its peer nations as a horrible situation of high mortality, beyond anything that's reasonable. And if you look at the data, it is a lot to do with this continuing fentanyl overdose and deaths of despair, they're called.
Yeah, deaths of despair. And the deindustrialization of the economy led to an enormous amount of despair. Compound that with what I would call just the continued reliance on the casino economy and matching low interest rates with stock market. So for 40 years, they would create stock market booms by lowering interest rates. And a lot of people would have their turn at the roulette wheel, and they would make out like bandits. Certainly a company like Facebook, for example, that went from 0 to 3 or 4 or 500 billion, almost $1 trillion in value, the knock-on effect that has for San Francisco or for the economy as a whole is enormous. When Amazon or an Apple computer becomes a $2 trillion economy, that ripples throughout the entire economy in a huge way. But that's entirely fueled by low interest rates and cheap rates and negative interest rates. So when the interest rate environment completely was shut off in February of 2022, the ability to magicate from nowhere these huge stock market booms that would have this ripple effect and kind of hide the underlying industrial weakness was turned off. And now that weakness is impossible to mask. And you see it, I think, directly linked to the mortality rate. I think that is really an equation that you can make. 1 + 1 = low mortality rate.
Yeah, and like I was saying, I mean, this is a guilt complex that they have, and they're, usually people with a guilt complex compensate for it in various ways, and this is their compensation. They're compensating for it by being authoritarian and turning against. That's what guilty people, if they feel guilty about a harm they've done to somebody, often turn against somebody because they feel angry with that person for making them feel guilty for, wiping out their family in a car accident or something like that. But that's what the elites have done in the United States. They made choices themselves, and it benefited them greatly, and they feel guilty about it because they know it's them. They know that make America great again. I mean, Trump's phrase, make America great again, and the support he received in his rallies from people who had voted for President Obama and then voted for Trump. All the people, they pretend to be fucking stupid I'm sorry about the swearing, but it just really bugs me. But they know, Hillary knows, all of her operatives know. They know exactly what happened in 2016, and they know what the people rejected. And this is what they're responding to. They know they are the guilty people. They're the guilty parties. They're the reason for Trump. They're the reason that Trump it was a vessel for them to say, make America great again. That was a cry for help. They don't want to die in a pool of fentanyl overdose vomit. That's not how anybody wants to die. They want to be great again, right? And all they ever have offered them is they don't have a solution, right? And we know they don't have a solution because there is a solution and they know it, but they're not willing to do it. They're not willing to allow America to be great again, because that means them losing their privileges. And you can see, okay, look at how they operate. So they always operate in a way that they, no matter what, win, because they are great. They're the nice people. They're so generous. They're benevolent dictators. And how they do it is this. So data came out this week about all those PPP loans that you and I have talked about since day one. Those happened during the COVID crisis. And what we know is they made a big show about sending the ordinary pleb, the one likely to overdose that year, $2,700 or whatever for a family. Here, we're so generous. This is us being nice to you. But then they're like, well, I'm going to take $2.5 million myself for every $2,700 I give to you, because they feel entitled to, well, I did such a good job. I gave that Joe Bag of Donuts who has no future and the America I created, I gave that person $2,700. That I feel good about myself. I deserve this $2.5 million in these free PPP loans that some middle-class schlub will have to pay, right?
Yeah. The thing is, we appear to have gone through the authoritarian looking glass, like we've gone through a portal. Like, I think the sense I'm getting and looking at social media and et cetera is that people are genuinely panicked at this point, that the authoritarianism has been turned up to 11. Like, there's no coming back at this point. They're really going down this path that historically we know always ends tragically for anyone who tries to do it. And there doesn't seem to be any walking it back. And the political landscape seems rife for continued, as the Economist magazine likes to call it, a social cohesion risk is how they refer to mass rioting on the street.
Well, let's not talk about Paris right now, because I do want to talk about the looking glass. This was like a weird thing. It's like, okay, we mentioned that the mainstream media and all the institutions like Moody's, Fitch, the elite media of the United States, they totally missed the collapse of all their friends like Sam Bankman-Fried, their Ponzi schemes, all the New York regulated entities like Gemini and Genesis and all those companies, all starting with G and stuff like that. In New York City, they collapsed, right? So they missed all of that because they kept on pointing at us because we were succeeding here in El Salvador, right? So the Wall Street Journal did this like hit piece. They were like really aggressive with us and trying to get some quotes and blah, blah, blah. But here's the looking glass. I'm not going to talk about the article. Actually, I didn't read it because it's behind a paywall. So like if you're going to write a hit piece about somebody, right? Like I'm going to write a hit piece about you and then like hide it behind a paywall. It's like, nah. It's like, okay, like, keep it in your little secret club. It's like a little boys club, like out in the treehouse, right? That you're just hiding. It's like whatever. It's
the
like
He-Man's woman hating club from the Little Rascals.
Little Rascals,
circa 1965.
I was wondering, but like this headline is obviously supposed to be bad, but I don't quite understand it. So maybe you out there can help me understand why this is a negative. So, talking about me and Max and Stacy, two New Yorkers who created a popular news show on Russian television are helping shape public policy around El Salvador's adoption of Bitcoin. So two New Yorkers.
It's a pejorative, seemingly. That we're two New Yorkers, and that's somehow pejorative. Like, who you talking to me? You got to be talking to me. I'm the only one in the room. You talking to me? Am I the guy you're talking to? Like, exactly. Where's that coming from, Stacy?
Well, the interesting thing is, up until I met Max, so 20 years ago, up until then, like when I was in Europe and stuff, people would always ask, where are you from? And technically, I'm from New York. I was born in New York. But okay, I'm raised in Connecticut. So anybody like Max, who is an asshole a genuine asshole, from New York, the original.
A New York asshole. All right. I wear that with pride.
They're the original. New Yorkers are the original toxic maximalists. Okay. So anyway, I would always tell people I'm from New York just because, well, nobody knows where Connecticut is, right? If you're in Germany and somebody says, where are you from? And you say, I'm from Connecticut. They're like, where's that? So you just say New York, okay? Because like, why go through a 20-minute conversation?
Because you're lazy.
Yeah. So you just say New York.
Yeah.
Because technically it says it on my passport. I'm from New York, right?
Sure.
And so then the first time Max ever heard me tell somebody I'm from New York,
Yeah.
I could see you out of the corner of my eye, just like, what the
No, I carry this whenever you say it, a big asterisk, right? So I'm from New York with an asterisk. Like, yeah, technically I was born in New York, but am I a New Yorker? Not really. That's a very specific thing to say I'm a New Yorker. It's different than, yeah, I happen to be born in New York. Boris Johnson was born in New York. I wouldn't call him a New Yorker, right? So it's a very specific thing to be a New Yorker.
Yeah.
And look, when you first told me that you were from New York, I immediately was suspicious of this because I wouldn't equate what I had met this woman as being a New Yorker. So then I asked a couple of quick questions and quickly sussed out that, in fact, you were not really a New Yorker, but born in New York. Okay, that's fine. Congratulations. You came close to living in the greatest city in the world. Okay, that's awesome. But I wouldn't, say categorically that when I think of Stacy Herbert, I think, oh yeah, New Yorker.
Yeah, but nevertheless, because the Wall Street Journal you're allowed to link to that on Wikipedia, it's verified fact that I'm a New Yorker. You can't disagree anymore because you don't have the authority to disagree because you're not the Wall Street Journal. So now technically I am a New Yorker, and it's like permanent. It's going to be permanent now in the digital record.
The Wall Street Journal is, of course, the house rag for a bunch of plutocrats on Wall Street engaging in massive fraud on a minute-by-minute basis, whose credibility, especially since being purchased by Rupert Murdoch, has gone down to below sewer levels.
But still, like it is, if the Wall Street rag, like, why do they write New Yorker like it's an accent? They're two fucking New Yorkers. Like, sorry about the swearing, but.
Okay, so maybe you are a New Yorker. We'll say, look, all you need to be a New Yorker is a favorite pizza spot. If you got that covered, then you're a New Yorker. And you have to know that on McDougal Street, you find the best falafel at Mamoon's Falafel. That's basically all you need to be a New Yorker. So, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've been looking at this all wrong. Maybe I need to revise my thinking and think about Connecticut as one of the 5 boroughs of New York City. It's Queens, Bronx, Brooklyn, Staten Island, Manhattan, and Connecticut. The 6 boroughs of New York, I think, is obviously the way I've got to think of this.
I was a little baby in Queens.
Right.
I was there. I was there. I don't have the accent, and I don't have. Well, I do have the attitude. You've seen me in JFK get.
I saw you wrestle a woman in JFK Airport on the ground. I thought I was in a woman's prison. You were like using incredibly foul language because I think she blocked you from getting through the passport correction, and you were like pulling each other's hair. It was one of the most spectacular catfights I've seen in years.
You two know each other.
No, that's it.
That's the cop.
That's
right. You two know each other.
That's right. So you two are brawling in the airport. This big cop comes around. He goes, first he says, "Separate." I'm like, this is like one of them female prison films. I wish I had my camera for this.
So, by the way, a lot of good stuff is about to happen in El Salvador, including look, this is for soundproofing. I know, like, you see how nice the audio is going to get. Is like going to be no echo.
Wow.
We're gonna have to create like hats. We're gonna have to have like we're gonna have like some sort of special soundproof hat, echo proof echo-proof the room.
What's
right?
that show
So
where the
audio
people, the
acoustics?
chicks are all like nuns from colonial America, and they walk around to get.
Yeah, it was bad. I don't like that. The Handmaiden's Tale.
Handmaiden's
it's just
Tale.
too bleak. I don't like that whole thing.
Okay,
So-
how about this? You look like the flying nun from that show.
Sure, why not?
That's much more upbeat.
Yeah.
with,
No, I like the Volcano Blonde, that meme that Cecilia created of me with that fake Pope jacket. Like, I look very Finnish, right? And it makes sense to walk around near a volcano in the tropics
puffy
if you're Finnish.
Yeah, that was a gorgeous meme. Cecilia constantly memeing things, and that was a particularly nice one, I must say,
She got that one
without
right.
a doubt.
Yeah. No. So. Yeah, so that's going to be the improvement here. Of course, I think, did I announce this past week, since the last show, about Safe Dina Moose coming here to El Salvador?
No.
Okay. Like, so many things happen here.
Well, tell the people.
It's pretty amazing.
Tell the people.
I mean, things are just flying.
Safe
all
Dina
over the
Moose
place.
is coming?
Safe Dina Moose is
Tell
coming
me
in
more.
May. He's coming in May because he's going to participate in this Kuba Plus project, which is, aiming for excellence here, nothing less.
Right.
That's what we're doing in El Salvador. And we're creating this university level education project to train Bitcoin and Lightning devs, Kuba Plus. We're basing it off of the president's very successful Kubo project, which is, all these in the urban centers, like in Soyapango, Ilopango, Apopa, across the country. They have many of these Kubos, and they're building more. And they're like education community centers for English language classes, computer classes, library sort of function for, people to be, build this Renaissance 2.0. Right?
Yeah, the response has been great to Kuba Plus.
Yes.
I saw Mario on the way in, and he gave me the updated numbers on the rate of folks who responded to the what's going on.
Yeah,
And,
everybody
he was,
wants
like,
in.
Pumped. Everyone wants in.
Everybody wants in. We're going to be making some more announcements. Like, it's like the top, like Bitcoin coders in the world. Like,
Right.
We're just A-list, right? I worked in Hollywood. I just like A-list. I like A-list.
You like A-list?
You might as well go A-list, because you know what? To make an A-list film with A-list stars,
Cost the same.
it costs the same amount of effort and time and energy on your individual part.
Yeah.
As working on a shitty film with like no-name Z-list actors. It's like the same amount of work. And why not just go A-list? Because, the red carpet is better. The food, the hors d'oeuvres are better at the
better.
premieres of the A-list.
Yeah.
Instead of Z-list, just like Twiglets and popcorn. That's it.
Twiglets. That's a British thing, isn't it?
Oh, is it?
It's a Marmite infused pretzel, I believe is what is. What do you call it again? A ziglet.
Twiglet.
A twiglet. Yeah, twiglet. It's a
Sometimes
Marmite.
I forget where I know things from.
It's from. That's because I used to have them at that place. I got to ask you something.
What?
I hear that they're going to make another in the series of Sharknado films. Do you have any insight into that? Because I'd like to be in that.
No, I haven't worked in Hollywood in a long time.
Okay,
Though,
just curious.
by the way, we did just hang out with some Hollywood
royalty.
Well, Morgan Mason and his wife, Belinda Carlisle, were here in El Salvador this week. So much happened. It's like Max and I are like the love boat. Like, we have to greet everybody and receive them at the airport and show them around the country. And Morgan Mason, it's funny because obviously I knew of Belinda Carlisle and her work, but not very many people would have, I'm not dissing him, but like not very many people, ordinary people, would know who Morgan Mason is. But because I worked in Hollywood, I knew who he was because, he was a producer on Sex, Lies, and Videotape. And I was very involved in that early Sundance Film Festival with the organizers of that who, the program who decided which films to show, like when it was still cool. After Reservoir Dogs, it kind of went downhill because it got too popular and too famous and too corporate. So, but up until Reservoir Dogs, and then after Reservoir Dogs, I didn't go anymore.
See, they're like a relationship goal because they've been together for 38 years, I think they said.
Yes.
And people come to us and say, "Oh, Max and Stacy, you're a relationship goal. You've been together for 20 years, and you're obviously just so smitten with each other and madly in love, 24 hours a day." But for us, it's Belinda and Morgan. You know, these
Yeah.
guys, they've been together and they're obviously still at it. And so that's a relationship goal for us. Now, Belinda, which we met her in Mexico City. I mean, she's an artist of the highest order. So she's still doing, as her instrument, the voice is being maintained with all this chanting and things that are going on. And her new record, Big Love, I believe it's called, is on YouTube.
Yeah, but she's like, Belinda's normal and she's sane. Like her husband's insane, right? He's
Morgan's certifiably insane.
Because he's insane.
Yeah.
He bought Bitcoin early because of us, like
Right.
watching the show, because he connected with your famous
Vision.
technique, your vision, if you want to call it that. Okay, your vision.
They got the vapors.
Yeah. So he is an early Bitcoiner.
Yes.
So there are a lot of people who are in that rock world who, because they travel a lot, they're always in hotels. And Kai's report, especially in the early days, like that was where a lot of people saw it, was in hotel rooms in like Bali or something. Like they would be in a Hilton there and then see it.
Right.
So it tends to be like rock star sort of people that would end up seeing it.
Yeah, and his dad is James Mason.
Yeah.
Who's one of the finest actors of his generation. And in one of my all-time favorite films, it would be The Verdict, starring Paul Newman, James Mason. And I heartily recommend this film. It's a fantastic film. And it's his performance, James Mason, is chilling as the overlord Boston Brahmin legal partner who tries to side with the church. And then Paul Newman's character ends up winning the case in the end. And it's a fantastic story of redemption. And there's a beautiful scene with Charlotte Rampling, which I won't go into now because it's probably not a scene that you'd see very often in this modern age that we live in. But check out that film and that scene and you'll see something very interesting.
Well, I think that's probably a good point because like right now people are probably now searching on Netflix or Amazon or YouTube for this film to go see it, or they're probably just skipping to the Charlotte Rampling scene. Okay, so we've lost our audience right now. They're
gone
because of you.
Well, I
lost us.
just blew it. They're lost in cyberspace.
So it's a good place to end because I know we have like a long line of people who are just trying to get in touch with us in order to escape to El
Say no
Salvador.
more.
They want to flee here and they need our help. So
Look, I'm packing up and I'm ready to flee out as quickly as possible. We have much to do. So, as always, it's all been phantasmagorical. Bye, y'all.